Hey Colts fans, I'm JJ Stankevitz. Welcome into another episode of the Colts Show, an Indianapolis Colts podcast. Remember, you can get us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. You can watch us on YouTube and on Colts.com and the Colts app. If you're on Apple, give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. We really like seeing those come in, not only for our show, but for our full lineup of podcasts, which is out in full force this week. We've got High Volume with Jeffrey Gorman, an episode with Edger and James. That's out, really fantastic. Jeffrey and Edge, just like could not have produced a better conversation out of that. Really interesting stuff from the Hall of Fame running back. Inside Football with Rick Venturi is out on your audio channels if you're interested in Rick's thoughts on the upcoming NFL draft. And then we also have some videos of Inside Football Extra looking at a couple of position groups for the draft. You can check those out on YouTube. Instant Reaction is going to be back during the NFL draft after the Colts go on the clock at 14 and make their selection. Casey Valier, Bill Brooks, and Rick Venturi are going to do those episodes on Friday and Saturday, and then on Thursday and Friday, and then on Saturday, it'll be Casey and Bill breaking down the Colts draft. All right, let's get that housekeeping out of the way. It is draft week, and I know you might be looking for an episode that's all about the NFL draft, but this episode's coming out Thursday morning. Look, the NFL draft happens in like 12 hours. Depending on when you're watching it, maybe a little bit earlier or a little bit less time there. But I really interesting conversations with the Colts' two new defensive backs coaches, Jerome Henderson and Chris Hewitt, that we're going to get into here. Not really draft related, but interesting nonetheless, and something that I'm really excited to share with you guys. The story that Jerome Henderson told me about Darrelle Revis was like awesome. Seriously, like keep an eye out for that. But I do want to talk a little bit about the draft. If you're listening to this before the Colts make their pick, I know like every mock draft has the Colts taking Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland. I compiled, it was 167 of these on Colts.com, and of those 167, 107 had the Colts taking either Penn State tight end Tyler Warren or Michigan tight end Colston Loveland. These are two really good football players. Two guys who, you can read the reviews, the write-ups that Dane Brugler from The Athletic, Daniel Jeremiah from NFL.com have on these guys, just like glowing write-ups on these two players. They're different. They're not the same. They're both really talented. But I want to get this out there that like sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it is obvious that a team is going to do something in the NFL draft. But it's only obvious if it actually happens. And it's like after the fact, oh yeah, that was obvious. Like, it might feel obvious that the Colts are going to take a tight end here, but just a word of caution for the draft. A lot of stuff has to align for the quote-unquote obvious pick to actually happen. The team has to like these guys. We don't know how Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, Jim Irsay, the Colts' whole scouting department, their whole coaching staff, we don't know how they feel about these two players and really anyone in this draft. We might have an idea, but we don't really know. And you don't really know until you get to draft night and the call gets made. The call can only get made if these guys are on the board, too. So are the Colts going to stay at 14? Are they going to try to move up? Could they kick back and maybe get one of these two guys? Or maybe you're looking at a guard, a tackle, a defensive end, a defensive tackle, another position in the first round. Could you kick back, still get that? And then maybe look at the depth of this draft and say you could still go address a certain position in need later. There's a lot that can happen. And a lot of uncertainty. I think about last year, the ripple effects of the Falcons getting Michael Penix Jr., what that did to the rest of the draft, where if they don't take Michael Penix Jr., maybe they take Laiatu Latu with the 8th overall pick, and all of a sudden, the Colts draft looks completely different. There is a defensive player taken in the first 14 picks. Latu is not the first defensive player off the board for the Colts at number 15. There just so much can happen, so many unexpected things can happen. It's kind of like putting a big puzzle together on draft night, especially in the first round, and you're just trying to figure out where do these different pieces fit? Do they align with needs? How do teams think? There are a lot of first-time GMs picking high, in this year's draft. What are the Jaguars going to do? Are they going to be the team to get Ashton Genty? Are they going to go offensive line or wide receiver? Or are they going to go Mason Graham? I mean, who knows? We'll find out in a little bit. Or I guess if you're watching this maybe on Friday, you're already going to know, and you're going to be like, dude, you're like, of course the Colts did this one thing. Or maybe, wow, that was a surprise they didn't do it. A lot of players, though, who I've seen mocked to the Colts beyond Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. Here's just a rundown of all the guys I compiled on Colts.com over the last couple of months. Alabama guard Tyler Booker, Michigan cornerback Will Johnson, Mizzou tackle Armand Menbu, Georgia safety Malachi Starks, Alabama linebacker Jihad Campbell, Texas cornerback Jedi Barron, South Carolina safety Nick Amon-Wari, Georgia defensive end Michael Williams. All those guys had more than 2 times they were mocked to the Colts in these mocks that I collected. That doesn't necessarily mean that one of these guys who maybe hasn't been mocked to the Colts a bunch at 14 isn't going to be the pick. A Luther Burden, I don't know about a wide receiver in the first round, the kid out of Mizzou. Will Campbell, the LSU tackle, I've seen him mocked a lot higher than the Colts at 14, but who knows if he's there. Ole Miss defensive tackle Walter Nolan, Tennessee defensive end James Pierce Jr., Iowa State cornerback Darian Porter, Texas tackle Kelvin Banks Jr., Michigan defensive tackle Kenneth Grant, Ohio State guard/tackle Donovan Jackson, Texas A&M defensive end Shamar Stewart, and Georgia linebacker/defensive end Jalen Walker. Those are all the names that I've collected who at least one person has predicted will go to the Colts in the first round of the NFL draft. I don't know about defensive back in the first round. The Colts made big moves in free agency to get Cam Bynum and Charvarius Ward. Probably unlikely it's a defensive back, but Chris Ballard's stance on it is if it's a good player, you take him and you don't worry about it. And you're always making moves years in advance too here. So you have to maybe look at who's going to be a free agent after the 2025 season. If you're scratching your head and like, well, why'd the Colts take this guy? Sometimes you need to look 1, 2, 3 years down the road when it comes to the NFL draft. All right, that's enough draft talk because we're going to have plenty of it coming to here for our Indianapolis Colts podcast. Between Instant Reaction, Inside Football with Rick Venturi will be back next week analyzing the NFL draft as well. On Thursday next week, I'm hoping to sit down with whoever our first-round pick is here with the Colts for a new episode of the Colts Show that'll come out next Thursday. For now, though, please enjoy Jerome Henderson and Chris Hewitt, Colts defensive backs coach and Colts secondary coach / passing game coordinator, easy for me to say. Really interesting conversations. You're going to learn a lot about defensive back play, about coaching, and about Lou Anarumo and the kind of defense the Colts could have in 2025. It is my pleasure to be joined here on the Colts Show by Colts defensive backs coach Jerome Henderson. Jerome, before we started recording, you had a background playing in the NFL, and you came up as a young safety with the Buffalo Bills in the mid-'90s. And you just told me you were a young pup who was trying to guard who in practice?
Bill Brooks.
Our friend Bill Brooks.
Not only in practice, but in games. I came in the league as a corner. And one of my early assignments, I think I'm pretty sure my rookie year, I was on Bill Brooks, and he had a couple completions on me. Bill, wherever you're at, thank you very much for that. But really good player, precise in his routes, knew how to manipulate. You could read the defense and know where to be, and just a fierce competitor.
Yeah, he's the
best.
As
you know.
Yeah, he's the best. All right, so let's talk about your role here with the Colts. How you liking it so far? Like, I guess the question I have for every assistant coach who comes in, you've been here for a couple months now. What do you think about Indianapolis? Or have you even had a chance to get to know this city yet?
Really don't know the city. The thing I know, it's built on a grid.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good.
The streets with state names go north and south. I know that. And I know how to get from here to my Airbnb. That's about it.
I mean, that kind of nomadic lifestyle of being a coach, you were lucky enough to be in New York for a while before coming to Indy. What are some of the challenges that presents you as an assistant coach of, you're saying you're staring in an Airbnb, but you're probably also barely there, if I had to imagine.
Yeah, and for me, I guess I don't see it as a challenge, more an opportunity. Very excited to be here and the opportunity that this presents. And, being in an Airbnb now, I got nothing to do but study and watch tape. So, like, being the new guy, like again, I'm just in a little Airbnb, and so I can stay here late. I can get here early. My wife isn't here yet, so I have no reason to go home other than to take a nap before I come back and start it all over. So it's been good.
For you, what excited you about joining this coaching staff, specifically under Lou Anarumo as a defensive coordinator?
Yeah, met Lou long time ago when he was still in college and was working out some of his guys, and he and I struck up a conversation, started talking, became friends very quickly. Then fast forward, he's in the league. as a DB coach and moves up to a coordinator, and have stayed in touch and talked, guys, schemes, different conversations with him, and always been impressed with him and his work. So I'm excited for the opportunity to work on him. I saw what he did in Cincinnati, and, not having a lot of like household name guys and still fielding a very competitive, tough defense. So I'm excited to learn and to be here to assist as much as I can.
How much does he put on you and Chris Hewitt, who's going to be on this podcast later, as the kind of DB secondary coaches, with the way that he wants to play his coverages, where, 1 week he'll play a lot of, quarters, and the next week, we're going to go cover 3. Okay, this week we're going to man up and, send pressure. Like he talked a lot when I talked to him earlier about just his philosophy of mixing up those coverages and disguising them. How much does that put on you as an assistant back there?
Well, I love it. I look forward to that, because I think that this league, for the most part, is a quarterback-driven league. And you got to play against the quarterback, and you got to be able to beat the quarterback. And, in our meetings, he talks a lot about just changing the picture on the quarterback, giving him something else to think about, make him continue to work, make him continue to process, make him continue to figure out what we're doing and where we're going to be, and from the same look, being able to do multiple things. So that excites me. I'm excited for our guys when they get here to learn and what he'll bring.
So you show up, and a couple of weeks later, Charvarius Ward shows up, Cam Bynum shows up. You've got a vet corner who's been a second-team All-Pro. You've got a veteran safety who's regarded as maybe one of the more intellectual safeties in the league. He's one of very high football IQ, playmaker, obviously. What do those two guys specifically bring to this defense, and what excites you about coaching them?
Just what you said. You start with Bynum. He'll come in for us and be a communicator, be a quarterback back there in the back end for us, and orchestrate things and help the other guys play better. Because of his football mind, his football IQ, and his experience. And then you add Charvarius Ward, who, like right now, you love him going up to match up against some of these big receivers in the NFL. He's a guy who doesn't back down from any challenge, who relishes those big moments, and excited for what they're going to bring.
What can a safety like Cam, with his versatility and his football IQ, what can that unlock for an entire coverage scheme in the back end?
Yeah, it can help a lot, especially, you're going to obviously have young pieces. You're going to have interchangeable pieces in the NFL nowadays, guys coming on the grass, guys coming off, and having that calming presence in the back end who can get us all on the same page, who can also make alerts and reminders to the guys to help them play faster because of his knowledge. We're really excited for what he's going to bring.
Where have you seen the safety position grow since your playing days, and maybe develop and into where it is now?
Like you said, I think the position has become a much more versatile position. Like many moons ago, it was kind of, you had a deep safety who played deep, rangy guy, and you had a box guy, big old Steve Atwater type safety who was down close to the line of scrimmage. And nowadays, guys with more versatility, guys who are interchangeable, who can do interchangeable jobs. Again, trying to present problems for the quarterback and different looks for the quarterback, guys who can cover a slot receiver, guys who can cover a tight end and match up there. And then back in the day, when you came down, it was really, you were just kind of outside. Now we're inserting the safety, and he's an inside piece at times. And then when you add what's happening in today's football with all the motions and shifts and different things happening, that guy is in the middle of a lot of stuff and has to be a very versatile piece.
Explain the inside-outside thing to me, where a safety in the 90s would be outside. Would that be, you're talking about a run support there?
Yeah, he'd be coming down run support and really would be on the edge for the most part and be a curl flat defender, or I have the tight end. Nowadays, that safety sometimes is coming down, and I'm basically doing the job of a linebacker at times in the run game. And so, like, now you have interchangeable, again, pieces that move a little differently.
That's interesting because I would have thought it would almost be the other way around. Like back in the 90s when the league was still so run heavy, it's like you got to come down to the box and you got to hit Jerome Bettis in the hole to support it. But you're saying it's more you would kind of maybe if he tried to.
But you always came down. For the most part, most teams came down from the same pattern, and now you change the pattern because again you're trying to present different issues for the quarterback, different places that safety is going to show up for the quarterback, so now it makes you come down sometime at some funky spots that you didn't do like back in the day when Steve Atwater was out there patrolling the secondary.
What do you remember about your first year as a coach? I believe it was with the New York Jets in 2008, 2009.
Yeah, so I started off came back into the NFL in what is now player engagement, but started helping the coaching staff right away. So 2006, I was kind of part-time, both positions. I did that 2006, 2007, where I went back and forth between multiple jobs. And then in 2008 is when I completely took the player engagement hat off and went full-time coaching. And, you know, I guess the thing that I did not realize was like all the hours that went into game planning. You know, because when you show up on Wednesday morning, all right, here's the game plan, here's what we're going to do, you don't know and see all the conversations that go on behind the scene and all the study that went into piecing that together to make sure we give ourselves the best chance to win.
I believe that year was Darrelle Revis' first year as a Pro Bowler, 2008. Yeah. It was his second year in the league. Mm-hmm. He's a Hall of Famer. I mean, he walked into Canton just like the inner circle type cornerback. What did your first year, you're coaching, and all of a sudden you probably knew Darrelle from when he got drafted and everything. But what did you learn about coaching from what maybe Darrelle Revis needed in those moments?
The thing that about being around Darrelle that I learned is like don't get in the way of really good players. My job with him was to give him enough, but not to hold him back and to put him in a box, because he was able to do things and wanted to do things that I hadn't seen before. Like we were a defense that, a lot of times when he was young, it would be, all right, Darrelle, if we have help in this defense, you go guard the second best guy. But if there's no help, go guard the best guy. And so for him, he would be frustrated and be like, Coach, I just give me the best guy, and I don't care if I have help or not. Just let me take the best guy. Matter of fact, give me the best guy and still help the other guy. And, and we started doing that. And, if we would have been, as a coaching staff, no way we're going to do that, maybe we wouldn't see the real – I think you still would have seen him, but not to the level that you saw him where he literally – would take a guy and erase him from the game.
Yeah, it's Revis Peninsula, not Revis Island at that point if you do that. Was there a moment, though, where, like, you're coaching him and you're just like, oh, my, like, this guy is, like, unbelievable. Do you remember, like, a game or, like, a play or anything that came up to mind there?
I remember in his rookie year, we were playing no, I guess it wasn't his rookie year. I guess it was maybe the 2008 season. We were playing a perennial Pro Bowl receiver, big physical guy, and like he came over when we were warming up and pregame and just kind of tried to make his presence felt. And I lose my mind. And
this is the receiver who came over and did that. Okay.
Yeah, and I lose my mind, and Darrelle looks at me kind of like, Coach, don't you realize what's about to happen to him? I'm about to go out here and kick his bleep. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to see. And once the game started, I was like, oh, wow. Why did that guy do that? He stirred, and Darrelle was usually pretty calm. He stirred him up a little more than normal, and it was a beatdown. And so, right then, I knew, this kid just different. He's built different because the guy, every measure, the guy was better, bigger, stronger, everything. But like the thing that I would say with Darrelle is, his whole thing was he wanted to take your heart. I want to reach in your chest, take your heart, and I want to show it to you while it's still beating.
That mentality, I don't know how much you've got to meet and talk with Charvarius, but like that mentality, like that killer mentality, Charvarius seems like he's got it. Like when I had a chance to sit down with him, and very brief, you're talking, his head spinning, he just got here, but like that, he doesn't lack for confidence in a way that I think all corners don't lack for confidence, but like I don't know, it feels like different with Charvarius.
I think that the really good ones really are built different, and they really see themselves different. It's like, if you've ever seen the poster of the little baby lion looking in the mirror, and he sees a big lion, and I think all the great corners see themselves bigger than they are. Because that they're going to put their will on you, and they're never going to let you ever look at you and think you have a chance. And if you got me, it was something I did. It wasn't because you got me. And so I think the great ones like kind of play with that confidence, that swagger that I can go guard anybody. And that's certainly what he brings.
That's very, very exciting. I can't wait to see how that plays out. All right, last one for you here, Jerome. You've worked for a lot of great defensive minds. Looked it up: Monty Kiffin, Wink Martindale, Rob Ryan. There's one other guy in there I'm forgetting. These great defensive coordinators. Like, what have you picked up just from those experiences with those different minds, different philosophies over the course of your coaching career?
Every time you're with somebody new, you try to pick up something that you can add and something that benefits you. And, a couple guys you did mention, I worked for Bob Sutton, my first boss, and worked for Dick Duran, who I learned a lot from. I actually played for Bill Parcells, and Belichick was my secondary coach and coordinator at one time. So you have all these great, and you think about all the great minds you're around, and you just try to pick up pieces while still being yourself, because I know I can't go be a Bill Parcells, and if I
not
did,
many can.
Right, and if I tried, the guys would feel it and sense it and be like, hey man, get out of here, you're fake. So I try to learn what I can, but still being authentically me. And approaching things the way I think I should, and doing it the way that I think gives us the best chance to win. So, from each coach, though, you really do take a lot. Like if I think about Bob Sutton, like in my first person I worked for, is his ability to sit back and remove himself from it and look at it from like a top-down view, and really was impressed with that with him. And then when I worked for Dick Duran, the thing that he did was he really didn't care what they do. It's all about us and how fast we play and how simple we are. And for him, the simplest thing is always the best thing. And so I learned that from him. And then as you go on, you just pick up these little pieces from Dan Quinn.
That's
you
right,
learned
yeah.
like the energy that and the confidence and the swagger that he wants to play with. And so you pick up these little pieces from each person you work for, and you learn, and you again try to make it parts of it part of what you do and how you do it.
That's great. Well, welcome to Indy, Jerome. You'll be picking stuff up from Lou Anarumo and Shane Steichen and everyone else around here in Indianapolis. Jerome Henderson, defensive backs coach for the Colts. Thanks for joining me here on the Colts Show.
Thank you.
Joining me here on the Colts Show is secondary coach and pass game coordinator Chris Hewitt. Chris, welcome to Indy, man. How has it been getting adjusted to this city so far?
So far, so good. I really like how you did that. You know how you just pop up with that's nice, man. I love the introduction.
I've got a bit of a knack for the announcer voice. I'm also the stadium PA announcer.
Oh, is that right?
In the building. So I'm the guy who's yelling third down when it's obviously third down. So I can like snap into that voice like My kids are always like,
I'm not here. Like this is my first time. So
Yeah.
what is that? What is third down? What is that big thing? What do you do?
it's third down.
I like it. That's
Yeah,
cool.
and that
That's
was even
cool.
more muted, but
Yeah, okay.
I can like snap in and out of like certain voices.
Yeah, the
and, like,
inflection
tones
and
and
the
stuff.
up and down. I like it,
Yeah.
man.
All
It's
right.
nice.
This podcast is not about me, though. This is about getting to know you, Chris Hewitt, newest member of our coaching staff here with the Colts. Just tell me about like getting adjusted to a new team and a new building, because you were in Baltimore for what, 12, 13 years.
13 years, yeah.
That was your only stop in the NFL. You were
Yeah.
at Rutgers before that. Just what's it been like getting used to a new building here?
Well, I mean, obviously it's a different culture. It's a different culture, but the objective is still the same. It's all about winning, and how you get to it is kind of the deal. So just really getting used to the culture and the people that are around the building, like people like you, 13 years in one building. You get to know everybody, pretty much everybody in the building. Everybody knows you. So it's different, but it's a good adjustment.
What about working for Lou Anarumo and working with Lou kind of attracted you to this position?
Because of who he was and his track record, and the style of play that we hope to employ here, which we will employ here, the aggressive style, which I've been a part of in Baltimore, and what he did when he was in Cincinnati. And I've known him for a lot of years. Just secondary coach, being in the league, and first thing first, when you work with somebody, you want to work with great people, and he's one of those guys. Just great person, good people, and then obviously his football knowledge. So that's what attracted me here.
You were in the same division as him for obviously quite some time. Like
Yep.
as a guy who works in the secondary, Lou's background is in the secondary. Like,
Right.
did you find yourself just maybe admiring like the work that he did and the way that he deployed coverages from afar? Like what sort of did you see from him when he was
obviously,
in Cincy?
you look at some of the things that people do around the league, and some of the things that he's done to stop some of our some like offenses, and especially going against Baltimore, some of the things that he's done to stop Baltimore offensively. Now, sometimes it didn't work so well, but
That's because Lamar Jackson's awfully
because
good.
of Lamar Jackson, he's pretty damn good. But obviously, like I said, you admire what other defenses are doing, and you study each other. And another thing is, because he's a secondary guy, he knows the pains and struggles that people are going through as a secondary coach. So a guy that's coached the secondary, he understands, and he knows how to call the game to help the secondary. So that's premium.
When you look at the coverages that he used in Cincinnati,
Uh-huh.
I mean, he played everything from your cover 0 to your drop 8, everything in between. His versatility seemed to really stick out in terms of that. As a DB's coach, as a secondary coach, how much of a challenge is that on you, knowing that, hey, we're gonna change it up every week. I got to be able to coach these guys to whatever the game plan is. Like, how does that impact you?
Well, I don't know any different, because I've come from a defense that has multiple coverages, from 0 to 2 to 3, 4s, different form of 4s, 6s. We play it all. There's no defense or any kind of coverage that I haven't played. Different nuances within the defenses that he has that I've probably haven't played, but interested to learn them and go through it. But those are the type of things that I'm used to. So I don't blink an eye when somebody says, "Hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." Whatever, let's go. I've done it before.
I want to talk a little bit about Baltimore, because when I was reading through your bio,
Mm-hmm.
John Harbaugh coached you for a year in college, right? Is that
For all I was in University of Cincinnati 5 years. All 5 years, John Harbaugh
okay? It was
there.
all 5 years.
Yeah, he was there. He was
So-
our special teams coordinator.
Right.
Yeah, so I was a lot of pounds before that, but I was a kick returner. I was pretty good. So
Yeah.
that's what he coached me from, and we developed that relationship over a long time.
The point I want to make there is, like, you never know who's going to be important in your life,
Right.
like early on, right?
Right.
And a lesson that I always tell, I mean, working in like the media space, I always tell people is, like, you never know who can help you out later in life.
There's no doubt.
It's cool seeing that from a coaching perspective, because when I was even talking to Lou, he coached with Joe Philbin at the Merchant Marine Academy.
Right.
And then Joe Philbin was the one who gave him his first NFL job and hired him in Miami. Like, you've lived that.
Yeah.
Like, if you're giving advice out to a young coach, or someone who's in the football space who maybe wants to go into something after it, would you kind of use that experience of you with Coach Harbaugh as an example of like, hey, you never know who can help you out.
Well, I mean, you explained it very well. I mean, especially in this business, coaching profession, it's all about relationships. When you go through a season and going through a season, it's tough. It's hard. You want to be with somebody who you can trust, somebody that you can count on. That's what it's all about. So most coaches, guess what they do? They go with people who they know and people who they can trust. Obviously, they got to be knowledgeable, but trust is a big important.
What about Mike Ditka? Tell me about playing for Mike Ditka for 3 years in New Orleans. I'm a Chicago guy. I got to ask about Mike Ditka.
Well, I didn't have a great relationship with Mike Ditka. Like obviously when I was playing, I was like the 52nd guy on the roster. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't have a great relationship with him. I got cussed out a lot. Got damn near cut like 5 times within the game.
Within a game?
Within a game. You know, he's one of those guys. He's real emotional. He gets going. But throughout the week, great dude. You know, you never really heard much from him. But come Sunday, man, different cat. But Mike was great. He was great.
I'm curious, as you now are 15 years into coaching, you know, in the NFL. I know you had a lot of experience with Greg Schiano back at Rutgers. Like, how do you just kind of pick those things from a Mike Ditka, from a John Harbaugh, from a Greg Schiano that you've now picked up that have kind of helped you become the coach you are today? Well,
I mean, it doesn't matter who the guy is. You can in coaching, you can learn a lot from an intern. You can learn a lot from, you know, it's all about perspective and being able to get those little sound bites, things that that's going to get across to the players the fastest and the easiest way. So I learned from a lot of coaches, but obviously Greg and John, they're big influential guys in my coaching career because I learned a lot from both of those guys. And obviously both of those men, they've been highly successful. So, but again, it's all about trying to get yourself, what's the word I'm looking for? Really just being able to just communicate with the players and being able to get those sound bites and get it across really fast. So, but it doesn't have to come from a John Harbaugh or a Greg. It could be anybody.
It's that efficiency in like your messaging and your teaching points.
That's right.
How has the coaching profession maybe evolved in your time? Specifically, let's talk about in the NFL.
Oh, the first one would probably be this changes analytics. Analytics has become a big part of football and how you draft a player, what kind of defenses you're gonna use versus you know, a particular quarterback, or you know, it's kind of been game changing where a lot of times because of analytics, because we have guys who can go through all of that, you know, the PFF and all those things, you can get to a game plan a lot faster through analytics.
Is that something that, I don't know, I feel like a lot of like I used to do a lot of stuff in baseball.
Right.
And baseball, there was like this huge resistance to analytics from like the coaches.
Right.
And now the sport's completely flipped where I think it's almost too analytically heavy. But for football, like it's a tool that you can use, but it's not the only thing.
No,
you can use,
it's
right?
definitely not the only thing. But what it can do is drive you to a conclusion faster. So somebody gives you some information, and you know, they say, all right, this guy, he really struggles with middle of field close. Okay, all right, well, let me look at all the middle of field close, and then you go through it and be like, oh, yeah, he really does. Or it's a different coverage, and you know, their analytical data is coming out as a middle field close, and it's cover zero ass. So I'm sorry, you don't know what you're talking about. So my point is, sometimes it can skew things too. So you still have to do the work, but you can get to a conclusion faster.
The development of like secondaries over maybe the last 15 years, it feels like there's a lot of creativity that has come with certain guys' roles. And this is going to be a Kyle Hamilton question for you. Like when you got Kyle Hamilton in there from Notre Dame, and like, how did you and the defensive coaching staff begin to envision a role for him, and how much outside the box thinking did it take to get him to where he is now, which is like, you know, an all-pro safety in the league?
Well, it's all about getting the guy into the right position. And with a guy like Kyle, he's really like a one-on-one. He's really a unicorn. There's not a whole lot of people or human beings walking around like him. what is he? He's 6'4", 217 pounds. He runs like a deer. He can bend. He can blitz. He does damn near everything very good to elite level. So honestly, if you put Kyle anywhere, he was gonna flourish. It was all really about just his experience, getting on the field and knowing things. And it really, regardless of where you put him, he was gonna flourish. He's just one of those individuals. He's one of one. You know, guys like Ed Reed, they're just one of one, and he's that type of guy.
With the new guys that the Colts brought in Charvarius Ward and Cam Bynum, how do you see their skill sets, both mentally and physically, fitting into this defense in what you and Jerome and Lou want to accomplish in the back end?
Well, obviously, when we looked at, you know, guys to help us in the secondary, you're looking for smart, physical, tough football players. And those guys embody all of those things. They're smart, they're physical, and they're tough. And building a team, building a defense, that's the most important thing. You want smart, physical, tough football players. And with Cam, he's kind of like the brain back there. He's able to line everybody up and be able to control the defense, the quarterback on the back end. You saw all those things evident what he was doing with the Minnesota Vikings, making plays and being able to control guys. But his physicality, his toughness, tracking the football, all those things, they were all there. He was just does everything right. So when you have a person who just does everything right, that's the kind of guy that you want out there on the field with you, because you're going to win football games with them. And Charvarius, press corner, he's going to be able to eliminate that number one receiver. Going to be able to challenge guys at the line of scrimmage, disrupt the timing, and the all experience and all the things that he's done throughout his career. He hasn't slowed down. So that's the reason why he's here. Those, again, smart, tough, physical football players.
When you've got those two veterans in, you know, Charvarius and Cam, and then also Kenny Moore, the second, a guy's a Pro Bowl corner,
right?
You know, has been really productive here in Indy. Just does that allow you to do anything different than if you maybe had a very young secondary back there?
You would like to think so, but it's all about once we get out on the grass. Because I don't want to speak too early about what's going to happen. Yeah. So we really got to get on the grass and get that chemistry going and really find out what we can do and what we cannot do. It's going to be an experiment early on until we find out what we really do well. But if you're starting with a Kenny Moore or you're starting with Cam, I mean, that's pretty good players. You're going to be pretty good regardless of what you do.
Isn't that the case every year, though, that it's kind of an experiment at this time? Because rooms change.
Absolutely.
All that, yeah.
It's all, like, again, it's about the chemistry and how guys are able to move and how they're able to communicate. That's number one thing, especially in the back end, is the communication. And if they can communicate and they understand each other, usually ends up pretty good.
Awesome. All right. Well, Chris Hewitt, secondary coach and pass game coordinator here with the Colts. Thanks for joining me here on the Colts Show.
All right.